Welcome back to the Learning Scientist news and analysis for viewers in the United States. Today we're covering the most serious geopolitical tension involving the United States and Iran. That could lead to military action as soon as this weekend. What we're discussing is based on verified reporting from major national and international news outlets. In recent days, the United States has moved significant military forces into the Middle East near Iranian territory. Multiple aircraft carrier strike groups, fighter jets, missiles, and support ships are now positioned in the region. This buildup is widely seen by defense analysts as preparation for possible military strikes against Iran in the coming days. President Donald Trump has not yet given final approval for any specific military action, but senior defense officials report the Pentagon is ready to execute strikes if ordered. The White House has indicated it is weighing all options, including diplomatic and economic measures, but military action remains on the table. The tensions between the United States and Iran have been increasing for months. Iran continues to advance its nuclear program and refine long-range missile capabilities. U.S. officials have repeatedly said that Tehran must reduce enrichment of nuclear material and agree to strict inspection standards or face consequences. These positions have been central to U.S. policy in the region. The United States has been conducting joint patrols with allied forces and increasing surveillance flights near Iranian airspace. These moves are intended to deter Iranian aggression while also signaling U.S. strength and readiness. The military build up reflects the seriousness with which the United States is taking the current situation. President Trump spoke to reporters this week and said that diplomacy remains the first choice for the United States, but that diplomatic negotiations must produce real results. He emphasized that the U.S. wants a durable peace and a stable Middle East, but will take action if Iran continues to defy international agreements and threatens regional security. American defense leaders have described the current posture as both defensive and proactive. The United States seeks to avoid full-scale war but is prepared to use limited military force to achieve specific objectives. Those objectives include degrading the Iranian nuclear program and reducing the threat of attacks on U.S. forces and partner nations. Iranian leaders have issued warnings of their own. Tehran says it does not seek a large-scale war but has repeatedly stated that it will respond to any American attack with force. Iranian state media and government officials have broadcast messages describing the threat of counterattacks against American bases and assets in the Middle East. They have also vowed to defend their borders and interests aggressively. The conflict has drawn responses from America's closest allies. In London, the British Prime Minister made clear that British military bases will not be used for possible U.S. launches. The decision underscores differences among Western partners on how to approach this crisis. Many European leaders are urging caution and continued diplomacy, even they express support for U.S. concerns about nuclear proliferation. In Geneva, representatives of the United States and Iran have continued indirect negotiations aimed at resolving disputes over Iran's nuclear program. Iranian officials have indicated they could present a revised proposal to halt nuclear advances in exchange for easing certain sanctions. Such negotiations are taking place even amid the buildup of military forces. Despite ongoing diplomacy, experts caution that it may be too early to expect a breakthrough that would end the threat of military confrontation. The fundamental gaps between U.S. demands for strict inspections and limits on enrichment and Iran's insistence on its sovereign right to nuclear development remain significant and unresolved. Here in the United States, public opinion is divided. Supporters of the U.S. stance say that the decades of failed agreements and broken promises have shown that a strong defensive position is necessary. They argue that Tehran has repeatedly violated commitments and that a firm show of force may be needed to compel compliance. Others, including political leaders, academics, and civil rights groups, warned that military action could spiral into a larger conflict involving multiple countries in the region. They argue that escalation could risk American lives, U.S. military resources, and decades of diplomatic progress in other areas. The debate inside the United States reflects deep concerns about the human and economic cost of war. Economists and global markets are also paying close attention to the situation. Oil prices around the world have begun to rise in response to defense movements in the Middle East. Increased fuel prices impact transportation, manufacturing, and everyday costs for American families. Companies that rely on global supply chains are watching developments closely as uncertainty affects confidence and investment. American military officials have stressed that if any action is ordered by the United States, it will be limited in scope. They have repeatedly said that the goal is not to invade or occupy Iran, but instead to target specific military sites, nuclear facilities, and missile preparation centers. The aim is to reduce Iran's ability to threaten regional security while avoiding unnecessary civilian casualties. One area of focus for U.S. defense planners is precise intelligence and surveillance. As of this week, unmanned aerial vehicle satellites and radar systems are constantly gathering data across the region. U.S. commanders want to ensure that any military action is based on the highest quality information available. This approach also reduces the chances of mistakes and misinterpretation of Iranian movements. Another key consideration for American planners is civilian safety. International law requires that civilian targets and non-combatants be protected to the greatest extent possible. U.S. forces have repeatedly emphasized their commitment to lawful and precise targeting in any possible strike. This is intended to minimize unintended harm and uphold global standards of conduct. Despite the buildup, President Trump continues to emphasize that his administration would prefer a political solution over war. He has engaged in talks with regional leaders, including those from Gulf Cooperation Council nations, Israel, and European capitals. The goal of these discussions is to build a coalition that can diplomatically pressure Iran into meaningful agreements. In Tehran, Iranian leaders have also noted that their own people may not support a large-scale war. With economic hardships already present within Iran, government officials know that military escalation could have domestic consequences. The Iranian population and economic conditions are shaping internal policy discussions as well. International organizations, including the United Nations, are calling for calm and urging both sides to return to negotiations. It is clear that global leaders understand that a conflict of this magnitude would not just affect the Middle East, but would have far-reaching consequences across continents. Humanitarian organizations warned that even a limited military engagement could create displacement, refugees, food shortages, and long-term societal disruption. Some analysts see room for a diplomatic compromise if both sides make concessions. The United States could agree to phased reductions in sanctions in exchange for verifiable steps by Iran to freeze nuclear enrichment at specific levels. Both sides could allow inspections by international monitors that report transparently back to the United Nations. This kind of agreement would be a major diplomatic victory and could avoid where entirely in Washington policymakers are preparing contingency plans for all possible outcomes. The White House National Security Council meets regularly with military leadership, economic advisors, and foreign policy experts to consider every scenario. It is a complex calculus that weighs strength, deterrence, diplomacy, and long-term regional stability. For now, American citizens are watching closely as the situation continues to develop. There are schools of thought that say tensions may ease and diplomatic progress could halt any military order before this weekend. Others say that Iran's historical resistance to external pressure makes a military move nearly inevitable. American news outlets carry debates between lawmakers, opinion leaders, and former military commanders on what course of action the United States should take. It is important to note that should military action be ordered by the President of the United States, it will require coordination with the Department of Defense and must adhere to U.S. law, international standards, and the constitutional process. The United States government is bound by checks and balances that govern the deployment of military force, and any such decision would be announced officially. Libeth White House Asaf today, the question remains unresolved. American military assets are in place, American forces are resident. Trump continues to weigh his options. Both the possibility of a strike and the hope for a diplomatic breakthrough remain in the balance. This is a developing international story with serious implications for American foreign policy, national security, and global stability. We will continue to bring updates as new information emerges. Stay tuned to the Learning Scientist News for the most reliable reporting, explained clearly and honestly, for viewers across the United States. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe for daily updates.